All right, everybody, now that we've got a feel for the whole half octatonic scale, let's unpack the half whole a little bit. Obviously, the big thing here is that it seems like just changing that first interval should not make such a big difference, right? It's still going to be just alternations of the half step and the whole step, just like the whole step, whole half octatonic scale is. But we're going to find that by making that one simple change, these scales become very, very distinct from one another and end up giving us a lot of different possibilities for how we might use them. So let's talk here half whole octatonic and see what we get. So first, of course, let's take an example of just how we would spell one here. So this is the half whole octatonic built on D. So as we said before, when we look at the first three notes, D, E flat, F, those or two of the three of those would be the exact same in the D whole half octatonic. It would just be D, E natural, F, whole half, half whole. But it's what comes after it that really starts to change things. So here's the half whole octatonic scale built on D. Well, I'm going to play that again. Very different scale. Very different scale. So let's unpack it a bit. Now, the first sort of distinction in usage in the half whole octatonic scale is that unlike the whole half, it does contain a perfect fifth, D to A natural. And so what that does is means that we can get some triads, right? Which is really nice. The triad that was on the tonic chord in the whole half, we will remember, was the diminished triad and a diminished seventh chord, which is why that scale is really useful in jazz. But here in this context, we've got a perfect fifth on D, above D, D to A, which means we've got triad on the one chord, and I sort of had a little, not Freudian, but somewhat of a slip there by making triad plural, because one of the real powerful things about the half whole octatonic scale is that we have a lot of super useful major minor triad splits. So if we look, we've got a D minor triad, right, on the one chord, really nice. Nice to have D, F natural, and A. But in the way this scale is built, we also have a D major triad, D, F sharp, A. So this is where, again, we sort of start to just see that the scale takes us in a very, very different direction, because we finally have a one chord that we can use that's not diminished, but we've got more than we expected. And I think that's the story of the half whole octatonic, is it's more than we expect it to be. We also have a really cool triad split on F, for instance. So we've got F minor, if we sort of think F, G sharp to C, and we've got F, A natural to C as well. So these are just two of the examples that we get here of D minor, D major, F minor, F major. And I just think that this can give this scale such an otherworldly right? It's a very, very different sound world that we've got. It's really lovely. We could sort of unpack this, and we can see that we have the same construction on B, D natural, F sharp, and B, E flat, or D sharp, F sharp. So we've got D minor, D major, F minor, F major, B minor, B major. I mean, come on. It's just really lovely. So that's a major difference here and a minor difference that we've got with the half-whole octatonic. The other sort of side of this is the intervallic makeup just in the scale itself. And this is where we start to see that idea of the half-whole octatonic being just a lot of different things all at once. And one of the great ways that we see that is in the fact that it contains the color tone from pretty much all of the modes, right? Particularly the 4 that we really are working on. It's got their color tones. The node that makes that mode distinct from all the others, all of them are present in the half-whole octatonic scale. So we can see, for instance, in D here, we've got an E flat, which we know of as Ra from the Phrygian mode. So if we're just in D Phrygian, that Ra is the thing that's going to make that really stand out. But also, we've got a G sharp, which is Phi from Lydian, right? So we could easily have a Lydian sound here. But Lydian with Ra of Phrygian. But we're not done yet because we've got B natural, which is La, the raised 6th from Dorian. And we've got C natural, which is like Te from Mixolydian. So if we wanted to, we've got D, F sharp, A, C natural, right? We could have that real strong Mixolydian. Te do, mi do, te do, that Mixolydian sound. So it's really pushing the boundaries of how many tonal structural ideas we can contain in one scale. But as if that weren't enough, we already sort of explored this with the triadic splits, the major minor splits we can have. But of course, we've got both the minor third, D to F natural, and the major third, D to F sharp in this scale. So the way I think about the half-whole octatonic is outside of the root and the 5th, D and A, right? Every other note is a really strong and sort of personality-filled note, which is kind of a cool palette to play around with. You know, when we're dealing with the modes and each one of these notes is sort of the central idea, you find that you're going to obviously be sort of coming back to that same thing again and again to really reiterate the sound that identifies the mode. But here, you have such this flexibility because of all these super prominent and strong melodic and tonal ideas. So it's a really powerful thing. I should have pointed out here, but I will now. The spelling for the half-whole octatonic, we have to deal with that doubled note situation. It should reflect both the minor third and the major third. So that's where we want to double our note in this scale, is with the minor third and the major third. So for instance, this would not have been nearly as effectively spelled if we had, let's say, G flat and G sharp. That just doesn't do the same, it doesn't give us the same window into what's really going on in this scale. So you want to have the minor third and the major third when you're spelling the half-whole octatonic. All right, let's look at one last thing about octatonic scales, which is the way that they are limited in their transposition. Now, this is a weird phrase. We've actually looked at this already a little bit, particularly with the whole tone scale, where we saw that in whole tone, there's actually only 2 collections of notes. There's the one that starts on C, C, D, E, F sharp, and there's the one that starts on C sharp. C sharp, D sharp, F, G. And the notes are not, you know, those are the only 2 distinct sets that we get. Well, octatonic is the same way, except in this instance, there are only 3 collections of the scale that are possible. This doesn't negate that idea of there being 2 varieties, right? There's the whole half and the half whole. This doesn't negate that at all. What it does just mean is that in terms of transposing these scales, there were only 3 distinct collections of notes, right? Think back to the major scale. There are 12 different collections of notes, right? C major, D flat, like C, C sharp, D, E flat, E. I could go all the way up and play a major scale, right, on all of these different places, and I would never repeat the same exact notes again and again, right? It would always be probably just one away from something else. With octatonic, however, there are only 3 distinct collections of notes. So if we look at these 3, one starts on E flat, one starts on D, one starts on D flat, just the way I've written them here. We could look and realize that through all of these scales, these are the only 3 collections. And so every adjacent pair of notes in these 3 examples is unique. And I'll just sort of point it out using A and B. So this first example has A natural and B natural, right? The second one has A flat and B flat. So if we compare those, yes, this middle one here has B natural, just like the top one, but there's no A natural, right? This one has G sharp and A flat, but no A natural. And the last one doesn't have B natural. It has A natural again, which this one didn't, and B flat. So you could do the same thing with each adjacent pair of notes. Here's C and D, right? Here's the C and a D. Here's D natural, but no C. Here's C, but no D natural. These are the 3 collections that we get, and anything else that you tried to write, if we went back and said, okay, well, we looked at the D whole half octatonic scale in the last video, which is actually this set of notes here. But in this video, we looked at the D half whole. Well, which collection of notes is the D half whole? Well, it can't be this bottom one, because look, the bottom one here doesn't have a D natural in it. But the top one, here's D natural, half, right, doubled, whole, half, whole, half, whole, half, whole. Right? And I could do the same thing if I said, okay, well, forget about that. What about F half whole? Let's do the F half whole scale. That's surely different. F, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, right? So the F half whole octatonic scale and the D half whole octatonic scale share the exact same notes. It's just where we start them, what we're orienting that scale around. So octatonic is kind of unique because of this limited transposition, which is also partly why it has such a vague and ambiguous tonality, because the same set of notes can be D half whole octatonic, can be F half whole octatonic, can be G sharp half whole octatonic, can be B half whole octatonic, right? It's all the same. So that's just another thing that makes octatonic really unique. But the big thing for us is really distinguishing between that whole half, in which we've got these tetrachordal relationships that are going to rule the day, and the half whole, in which we've got the color tones from all the modes, we've got major and minor, and we've got these numerous major, minor, triadic splits. So let's go have some fun with the octatonic scale.